All right, so we left off with the assassination of William McKinley. Remember, McKinley is considered like a big business type of president. He was bankrolled by guys like J.P. Morgan. In the election of 1896, he defeated William Jennings Bryan. He'll be reelected in 1900. He is a president that is not only connected with big business, but also connected with the beginning of the imperialism era. Everything from the annexation of Hawaii to the Spanish-American War to open door policy under his Secretary of State, John Hay, occurred on his watch. So, again, he wins re-election, defeats William Jennings Bryan and now Eugene B. Debs. Remember, Debs ran as a socialist candidate. But on the evening or afternoon of September 6, 1901, a young anarchist by the name of Leon Czolgosz is going to wrap his arm in a cast, and inside the cast he'll hold a revolver. And the president was attending the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York. He approaches the president to shake his hand, but instead shoots him twice in the abdomen and chest, or torso area. And McKinley actually doesn't die immediately. He dies several days later. Czolgosz has no remorse. He was distraught about the income disparity between the rich and the poor in this era, and did not regret his decision to pull the trigger on the .32 caliber handgun that killed the president. It's kind of wild to think about. This is your third assassination in, let's see, from 65, 75, 85, 95. So in just over 30 years, just under 40 and over 30, there have been 3 assassinations: Lincoln, Garfield, and McKinley. Here is the assassination on the left, McKinley on the top right, Leon Czolgosz on the bottom right. So Teddy Roosevelt comes to power. We talked about his domestic policy of the square deal, and we talked about his progressive era of trust busting. But as far as imperialism goes, TR is going to make it his goal and mission to achieve the successful construction of the Panama Canal. Panama at this period of time is not independent. They are under the control of Colombia. And they want independence, and they obviously want this canal to be built. The French had attempted to build it before. Here you go. Thanks. The French had attempted to build it before, but it didn't work out. A lot of the French workers were dying of diseases like yellow fever and malaria. So the United States moves in, and just in one day, U.S. military backing will secure the Panamanian independence, and so begins the construction of the Panama Canal across the Isthmus of Panama. This is still considered one of the greatest engineering feats ever undertaken in the history of the world. This will connect the Atlantic to the Pacific. This will expand global trade. It will lead to a price revolution for goods globally. And it's negotiated through a treaty between the United States, Panama, and, in a way, sort of strong-armed Colombia. So now the United States comes under control of the Panama Canal and becomes exempt from tolls on the canal for a 100-year period. The toll act was passed later during Wilson's administration. And the canal wasn't handed back until just around the time you were born. roughly. Pretty close to when it was handed back to Panama. So what do you think is the rough estimate of a ship this size? What do you think that toll would typically run you? 1,200 is a good guess. Okay, it'd be more somewhere between 12 to 20 grand. Yeah, 12 to 20,000. Yeah, so a little bit higher than 1,200. Yeah, somewhere between 12 and $20,000. So now you've got the United States has a growing role in international trade, global economy expands, and this urges America to build, innovate, and explore new markets, especially in Latin America. And that's going to lead to a policy that we're going to talk about here momentarily. So what we've got here on the left is a map. This is a map that shows the connection between the Atlantic and the Pacific. Here we have the early construction of the canal on the top right, bottom right. This is what the canal looks like today. Do you guys ever check out American Experience on PBS? It's a pretty cool show. They did a really great one on the Panama Canal not too long ago. This is an awesome political cartoon of Teddy Roosevelt just digging his way through the Panama Canal and tossing the dirt on Bogota. And on the top it says New Treaty. So the creation of the international markets that occur during the end of McKinley's time in office and throughout Teddy Roosevelt's time, even into the presidency of William Howard Taft, are as follows. You have the open door policy that was led by Secretary of State John Hay. Hay had been Secretary of State under both McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt. The goal of this, open up the doors to trade with China. All these other countries had already begun trading in China and even setting up colonial empires. Britain in places like Hong Kong, the French in Indochina, Russia and the Dutch and other ports of call. So the United States, as a result of the Box Rebellion, wants the United States to be able to get in there and get involved in the trade. We also have the Roosevelt Corollary. This is an extension to the Monroe Doctrine. Basically, the United States saying, not just the United States, but Teddy Roosevelt saying, if something goes wrong in Latin America, whether it be a domestic issue or it be a foreign issue caused by a European nation, the United States has the ability and the right to intervene militarily. So what military force do you think we end up sending in? Yeah, the Marine Corps. Good job. Did we ever talk about this? I didn't think so. Good. Nice work. The Marines are going to be the ones sent in. This is known as big stick policy. And the big stick here, it's like an African proverb. Speak softly and carry a big stick, meaning you shouldn't have to talk a whole lot, but when you do have to talk, words aren't enough. You need to drop down the hammer and bring force. What is the hammer in this situation? What style of military have we built up? What have we revolutionized in this area? Our Navy. Because our Navy's gone from what to what? You're on the right track. Wood to iron, iron to steel, right? Think about the Civil War. That was like the ironclad Navy. So there we go. Now in the post-Civil War era, steel Navy. So the Roosevelt Corollary is attached to Monroe Doctrine. Dollar diplomacy, tremendously important. Please pay attention to this. It's started by TR, but it's carried out by William Howard Taft. Taft, remember, was handpicked by Roosevelt. His domestic policy was trust busting. His foreign policy was dollar diplomacy. This is getting American businesses, American banks, and investors to invest in major projects in China, Manchuria, and Latin America. It does not go well in China and in Manchuria. Any idea what type of buildup was taking place there? Naval is a good guess, and you're not totally wrong. There is naval buildup in that region, but there's something else that America's going to try to come in and build that they've been tremendously successful at. Railroads, very good. Railroad production. But it doesn't really work out that well, okay? Latin America works out swimmingly for dollar diplomacy because it's all based around what major project? Panama Canal, very good, awesome. So the Panama Canal drives that. And you have to think about the lasting legacy of dollar diplomacy, whether it be in tourism, whether it be oil production, whether it be in railroad production, whether it be in just the movement and trade of goods and the buildup of an influence of the American banking system. Dollar diplomacy most certainly left a long legacy. So, growth in international trade in this era, hands down, and really the guy that sparks all this is going to be John Hay, Secretary of State under both McKinley and TR. Easy way to remember open door policy. Hey China, open up your doors for trade. Get it? All right. Hey China, open up your doors for trade. So check it out. Along the map here, you can tell that America is trying to get in and compete. We have a number of different ports of call that are now colonial landholdings, and you can see why the United States inserts itself into Filipino affairs. So as far as the corollary is concerned, it is a continuation of the theory of the Monroe Doctrine. Another part of the corollary is that it gets American military engagements, or at least military intervention, involved in a number of different areas. This was all laid out in Roosevelt's State of the Union address in 1904. And really, in this era, there are a number of different places that we send military forces into through the corollary. Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, and the Dominican. Almost always we send in Marines. A little bit more about the dollar diplomacy. Remember, we're looking at railroad production in China and in Manchuria. We're looking at the buildup of banks, business, and the growth of the marketplace in Latin America. Dollar diplomacy does not go well for Taft in Asia, but it does go well for Taft in the United States and Latin America. And these policies won't be really, the corollary and dollar diplomacy aren't really reversed until the Pan American Conference in 1933 in Uruguay. That's when we start to go towards what is called good neighbor policy, and it's a reversal. But a lot of that, the impact's already been made. Like if you've got a aggressive global trade policy or an aggressive global market expansion policy, which is what this was, if you follow through with that for 30 years, there's going to be a lasting impact. So I'm going back to my favorite cartoon of TR and Taft, of the little Bo Peep and the sheep. And you can see TR's got the big stick and the prod say my policies. So we have an American annexation overview. We've got, I should probably include Alaska on here. Who do we buy Alaska from?
Russia.
Russia, good, for $7.2 million. Hawaii, that's going to be a military coup d'etat over Queen Kalani. Starting during the Grover Cleveland administration, comes to a conclusion under the McKinley administration, leads to the official U.S. annexation of Hawaii, mainly over what? Resources. What do we want? Oil later, yeah, pineapples. Yeah, you're right about pineapples, sugar. But how can we connect petroleum to this? We're not looking to like set up oil dikes off the coast of Alaska. What are we looking, how would petroleum tie in, and I'm sorry, not Alaska, Hawaii. We did get a lot of oil out of Alaska. Why do we want Hawaii in terms of petroleum? Ships, very good. So what area, Blake, might we want to refuel these ships? What part of Hawaii? The military base. Pearl Harbor, very good. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Nice job there, guys. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. That's going to be the goal. So when you think about refueling, that's really where that becomes the central location for the U.S. Pacific Fleet. Philippines and Guam obtained through the Spanish-American War. Puerto Rico obtained through the Spanish-American War. And during the Wilson administration, the purchase of the U.S. Virgin Islands from Denmark. So this particular cartoon comes from Puck, satirical. It's also, the intent is to be offensive, to sort of bring across a point here. So Uncle Sam is the teacher, the classroom is the country. The good little boys and girls in the back here are your 48 ratified states at the time. The students being disciplined up front are your new territories coming in: Philippines, Cuba, Puerto Rico, and Guam. There at the door, we have Hawaii arriving class. Here in the corner on the reservation would be the Native American. And in reference to Jim Crow, this gentleman can work in the building but can't get an education there. So there's a lot going on with this era of imperialism. And I'm not using this cartoon to offend. I'm using it to educate. I think it's important that we break these cartoons down. And then finally, we've got our Monroe Doctrine cartoon on the left. Europe stays out of the Western Hemisphere. And then the big stick policy, Roosevelt dragging the white fleet behind him, carrying the big stick in the Caribbean. All right. Questions?